Welcome to the Roller Coaster Ride of Parenting podcast. I'm Jenny.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Susanna. And we'll be your hosts as we discuss the highs and the lows of the parenting journey.
We'll be having conversations based on the content from Susanna's book, A Childcare Expert's Guide to Enjoying Your Parenting. Throughout her time as a childcare owner and operator, Susanna has encountered many overwhelmed parents, and she wrote this book to encourage and equip them to be the best parents they can be.
This podcast is an opportunity to share more tips and tricks around the challenges that parents face. It's our hope that through our shared knowledge, experiences, and conversations, we help you to better embrace your parenting and enjoy your roller coaster ride.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we'll be discussing the impact our words have on ourselves, our children, and others. We'll focus on how our words hold meaning and value and how to use this in a positive way. As always, we'll be referring to Susanna's book to guide our conversation and hopefully provide some helpful insight. So Jen, for me growing up, my dad nicknamed my grandmother, my mum's mum, Big Bad Owl. Her name was Alice, but Big Bad Owl, like she was 5 foot nothing, but like a powerhouse. And there's many memories I have, and she epitomizes big and bad to me in a beautiful way and in not so beautiful ways. Did you have anybody that had nicknames in your family growing up, or in the States, is that a thing to give people nicknames?
It is definitely a thing. I don't have a nickname.
You do have a nickname. You know what you have? When you taught your nieces to call you Jenny's the best.
Yes.
So tell that story. Go for it. Yeah.
We could do the language.
So your nieces had a nickname for you at one stage?
My nieces are growing up in Finland, so they speak Finnish.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily speak English. So I taught them that my name is Jenny the Great. And also Jenny is the best. And they called me Jenny is the Great and Jenny is the best their whole lives until they were about 7 or 8 and started taking English in school. And then they called me one day and said, Jenny is not the best. And they had been fooled their entire life by my words.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your words held great power. That's why Jenny is great, right?
They did. And they were a source of much amusement for our entire family at the expense of my nieces. Yes.
Very cool. Well, I guess we can do so much with words. Like we can have fun with words. We can trick people with our words. We can build people up. We can tear people down. So what about, you were saying earlier before we started a bit about how words have been impacting your kids. I mean, we're in the middle of a coronavirus, which is heavy, but how's that been impacting your kids? You had something to share around that.
Yeah, it's been interesting the past couple of weeks. Like, I think we're all getting really used to a new normal. Like in our house, we actually don't really ever have the news on. Like, we look at the news on the internet when we need to, but my kids aren't often around, like with the news just playing in the background. So a couple of nights ago, they had been at a friend's house. Like, so this was before the isolation started, and they just wanted to get out of the house. So they were there and the news was playing, and they came back, and both of them came back with just not feeling well. Like, the little one, she said, oh, my tummy's really sore. I don't feel like dinner. The older one, he said, I've got a headache. I think I want to go to bed. Like, they were just weird. And I went, I need to check their temperature. What's going on? But then when we got in bed, after I was cuddling them and just talking to them, and I looked at them and I said, hey, are you guys scared? Like, do you think that you're scared at the moment? And they both, on cue, they both just burst into tears. And they started telling me, and they had both really interpreted that situation very differently. So Izzy, she's 6. She had heard a lot of scary stories, and she was really concerned about her grandparents. She was concerned about if they were okay. She hadn't seen them. They're overseas. She'd heard that a lot of grandparents were in hospital. She was really worried. Max, on the other hand, he had heard like it's kind of like the flu, like it's probably not that big of a deal, but I can't see my friends, like this could go on for 6 months. Like they both heard little bits of it, but I just thought because they're so young, they didn't have that ability to put it all into context. And I think even as an adult right now, I'm having a hard time putting it into context.
Yeah.
So we sat there and we talked it through and we prayed for peace. And they said, pray for peace, Mummy, which we did. And it worked overnight. But then the next morning we woke up and we went, we need something practical here. Like, what can we really do? And I went to work. I work at a hospital and I talked to one of the psychologists there. And she said, oh, you know what you should do? You should put in worry time every day. And so we should encourage them to worry. What does this look like? But she said, no. Like sometimes like when it's something huge that's going on, you can think about it all day. There's words coming at you constantly. So you need to have a time when you're not tired, a time when like, you've got some perspective, like not right before bed, but to say, okay, this is worry time. It's 20 minutes and we're going to actually talk about all the things we're worried about. But what was really good was writing them down. So we're worried about our grandparents. So what do we do? Like, how do we talk about that? And then when we finish, we folded it and we stick it in a jar. And the good thing about worry time is that it starts and it stops. So you put a lid on the top of the jar and we're like, okay, well, we've worried today. And those are appropriate things to worry about. Like it is something that we need to talk about, but now it's done. We don't have to do that again until tomorrow. So that's been a really good thing with the kids. And I just thought, that was so practical and so easy.
So have you found, because they're not talking about it all the time, then the power of the positive words that they're talking and in other times of the day, that's kind of diminished the enormity of the worry? Like hasn't stopped them from necessarily worrying full stop, but do you think it's taken away the enormity of the worry or the power of the worry?
I think so, because I think it's given them like a way to talk about it. Because you know how like when you're under stress or when you're feeling anxious, like you often get those physical symptoms, your tummy's sore, like you're just internalizing it. So I think it's given them something like, oh, I've got something for the worry jar. I've got a place to put it. We did, I guess that positive side as well is across from our kitchen island, I took a picture off the wall and put a big stack of Post-it notes and said, okay, but we're really worried, but there's a lot to be thankful for as well. There's a lot of different things, but what are we thankful for? So we started writing Post-its. So we were like, by the end of however long this is going to be, maybe we can fill this whole wall with things we're thankful for.
Yeah,
so there was the two extremes, and I think it's been good for all of us. Like me and Jared, my husband, we've been putting Post-its on as well.
Yeah, it's good.
So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I think it's a practical thing that is working.
So even though they're words, it just shows you the power of words, whether they be negative or whether they be positive. And, we find too, like the three of us, we like to have a laugh and we're often having jokes between ourselves and just seeing how laughter, when you like, I love how comedians, the power in their words is, so Rob's, my husband, his brother is a comedian, Tim. Sometimes I'm like, oh, give it a break, Tim, because enough is enough. But it is surprising how with comedians, when they get you laughing, how the power of those words that make you laugh really lift your spirits, and I think lift you physically as well, because they've actually proven, haven't they, scientifically, how the power of words, how the power of laughter, but the laughter usually comes from the words, or often comes from words being spoken in the first place, and then we're laughing at them. It actually does feed our bodies and feeds our minds, feeds our spirits, and so words are just so extremely powerful. And that saying that used to be out when I was a kid, I don't seem to hear it so much these days. Maybe that's because I'm not a kid. I don't know. But, sticks and stones will hurt my bones, but names will never hurt me. Well, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think it's one of the biggest lies, to be honest, that was ever created, because words do break people and words do build people. Words do set people up for success, or words do set people up for failure. And I think as parents, we have to be really conscious of what we're saying around our children. We need to have those times in the family where there's just straight out laughter. We need to be silly sometimes with our words and just crack the jokes or say, funny things. And And then we need to make sure we're having times in the family where, like you're doing now, Jenny, using your words really deliberately to help the children get through this journey of fear, because there is so much fear around this coronavirus, but you're teaching your children how to handle fear, which is fantastic, because we can't just push it down and pretend it's not happening. We need to use our words to help the children bring up their fears so that they can use their words to release their fears, but then to show them how to then put them in the jar, limit the time that they're spoken about, and then also spend a lot more time of the day where they're talking about thankfulness or whatever, or just playing and just being children. I think is just extremely powerful and necessary. It's good.
I'm still learning how to use, it's weird, at 44, still learning how to use words in the right context at the right time. Like, I love what your psychologist at work said, Jen, like to have worry time, because I'm a very positive person by nature, and I love being around positive people. But yet, for me, I've found that having a time or a space to actually process the worry that's in there, rather than just, I would sometimes, with my personality, push it to one side and not want to deal with it. And so I think having a space to actually deal with it, and even this last 2 weeks, ring around our preschools, our centres, to check in on staff, check in on the directors, and at times if I've been having a really hard day, be vulnerable enough not to say life's great, but to go, it's been a bit challenging, so try to be real without bleeding all over them. And at other times, when things are going well, or to actually, I guess, tell the truth, like to be vulnerable in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And then one of our directors, whenever I ring her, you can almost hear her, there's like sunshine comes out the end of the phone because she has so much, she's so positive. And I keep telling her that. But it's been like my ray of sunshine sometimes when I ring her. She just brings such life. And that's not everybody's talent. It's not everybody's gift, but there is such power. It's just a spoken word. We're on the phone together, and just the way she talks and the things she says, I always feel lighter when I get off the phone. And I'm sure she has her bad days too, but it's been really powerful. So it's balancing that. Like, I would love it if every time that our director spoke to me, they felt like they left the phone lighter, but at the same time I'm trying to balance that with being real and being authentic when life isn't amazing. And I feel like the coronavirus just kind of brought up for me that words are super powerful. The information I take in is powerful. My words are having a massive impact on those around me, my kids, my family, our staff, and trying to be mindful of how much negative and positive I'm taking in from the world around me. Even like the news, I mean, there's so much doom and gloom, and even the news is trying to be happy at times, like they're, finding people playing pots or cats doing things on telly, whatever. But so much of the news is doom and gloom. Like, how, Susanna, how have you gone about trying to find that balance, or what does that look like for you in your life, listening to other people's words in the midst of this corona crisis?
Yeah, well, I guess I choose carefully who I listen to for a start. Choose carefully what news I watch. In fact, I was telling Jenny earlier that the last 2 nights I've decided not to watch the news at all. But we also have to be responsible there, and watch the news enough, or get the information of the news somehow or other enough to be able to be responsible and be a part of the world, because we are a part of the world and we can't just hide ourselves. But I find myself, I'm like you take after your mother a bit in this, that I'm a very positive person. And so it takes a lot for words to really knock me. But I did find the last 2 nights, I thought, no, I've had enough. I've had, because your father and I have just been in isolation for 14 days. So we did watch the news quite a bit, more than normal. Because often in normal life, anyhow, I can be too busy to watch the news. I might only watch it about 3 times a week normally. But we were watching it every single night because we were home in isolation. And I did find that it really started to affect me. I thought it made me feel flat. I didn't get to the point where I was fearful, but I got to the point where I was flat, and I thought, okay, flat is the beginning of becoming fearful. So do something about it now. And so I chose the last 2 nights not to watch the news. However, everybody around me is talking enough anyhow that I picked up where we're up to, where society's up to with it anyhow. And so, yeah, but in life in general, coronavirus or no coronavirus, I choose who I want to listen to and who I don't want to listen to. That doesn't mean to say that I'm snobbish about it, because I will listen to people who are negative. I will listen to them if I feel that they need somebody to just be there and be with them in the moment. I'll do that, but I just make sure that I'm not spending the majority of my time with negative people, because I'm just like everybody else. I will have my moments where I might be a bit fearful, or I might be a bit down, and I need somebody who's a bit positive to listen to me getting things off my chest. So I'm happy to listen to people to get things off their chest. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, oh, you're not being positive, so I'm not listening to you. But I gauge that very carefully and make sure that I don't have too much negativity. I have enough positivity being spoken around me. I mean, I will probably, I don't know, you would know better than me, Ben, being my son, but I would say 95% of the time I'm speaking positively. But I need to make sure that I've got a good 85% of the time I'm within the company of positive thinking and positive speaking people, because I really believe in the power of the spoken word. I think it's extremely, extremely powerful.
So when you were raising your children, how did you use the power of positivity or spoken word in a constructive way as a mum? How did you go about that?
Well, I guess your father and I, we've always been aware of the power of words, and so we have been very deliberate about the words that we choose to speak to your children. But again, we are human, so at times we didn't speak positively, whether we were tired or frustrated or whatever, so I'm not saying that parents have to do this perfectly either. They don't. It's the majority of the time that counts, and the sincerity behind it. So we stopped and thought before we spoke to you most of the time, and we deliberately we didn't. So nicknames, for instance, you were saying before how Dad had that nickname for my mum, Big Bad. Well, Mum laughed at that, and she actually really relished in it. So
she definitely embraced it, for sure.
She definitely embraced it. So that was fine. But we made sure if we had nicknames for you children, they were positive nicknames. We made sure that for instance, your youngest brother, he was always a child who liked to really work things out and think things through. And so people would often say to him, oh, you're such a worrier, Daniel, And he would come to me and say, Mummy, am I a worrier? I say, no, mate, you just like to work things out. You like to know how things work, and you like to work it out. So that's okay. You can work it out. So, but if he had come to me and said that, and I said, yeah, you're a real worrier, then he would have been twice as much a worrier. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's powerful, because any human being has talents. And so Daniel has a talent to actually process and work things out. And you were speaking to that. Was there a destructive side? Yeah, he can actually go to that worry side. But what you want to speak into him, and I think what you did beautifully for us as kids is you looked at what our talents were and you tried to steer us towards the constructive side of our personality. You didn't ignore the destructive sides, which we all definitely had and have. But you really did try to help us to focus on where we had talent. So for me, obviously as a dyslexic kid, reading wasn't my strong point, but so there was lots of encouragement to go surfing and to see myself in that light. Yeah. So words was just an extension of that. You often tried to use positive words to bring out the best parts of us, I think.
Yeah.
And you can easily use words to tear someone down. And we've all got destructive sides to us. Our flaws. And if you point those out all the time, it can begin, as a human being, we can often see our own flaws. So to have them pointed out to us frequently only reinforces that negativity.
And I think as a parent, you see your children, and if they do have a weakness, rather than be speaking about it, as you were saying before, there's always a strength behind that weakness.
Right.
And so as a parent, we need to look beyond the weakness part of it and work out what that strength is. And that was Daniel's strength and still is as a grown man now. And he blesses our company immensely for it because he
Absolutely.
has to work out what's going to happen in advance. He likes to work it out. He's thinking ahead all the time. And therefore that can cause worry if you're not careful. But by pointing out to him, no, you just like to work things out, he was able to appreciate that part about himself. But I think it's the same even with the relationship between partners. It's exactly the same. Like you were saying, Jenny, before, how you're the extrovert and Jared's the introvert. And so the whole isolation thing works brilliantly for Jared because he likes to be isolated. He's in heaven.
He is loving his life right now.
Yeah.
And I have completely swapped into being really grumpy. I'm being very intentional not to be super grumpy at home because it is not my comfortable spot.
Yeah. And yet, when you look at the pair of you, with your words, you can either labour on the fact that Jared's the introvert and that he's having a ball and that you're the extrovert and this is driving you insane, or with your words, you can actually speak to each other about the advantages of your extrovertness in this and the advantages of his introvertedness in it, because there always will be the advantages and disadvantages. It really comes down to what are we focused on. I really believe that if you're focused on something, your words will follow that where your mind's been. Like your words do come from your mind in the first place. So whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're dwelling on, that's where the words are going to go.
So that's beautiful. But Jen and I were both sharing before we started that we're not necessarily feeling that right now with our partners or with our kids.
Yeah.
And listening to lots of other people in the midst of coronavirus, forced to spend abnormally large amounts of time with family.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily feeling that. Like, I agree. I totally agree with you. And I believe what you're saying. I don't feel what you're saying right now, though, if I'm honest.
But that's the thing, you see. That's the power of words. You don't always have to say what you're feeling.
True.
But when you stop and think about your words and the impact of them, you can choose your words. You can still choose your words in amongst what you're feeling. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Please don't hear me say that. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. And you're not always going to get it right, But if you aim for it, it's like your dad says to me, what you don't aim for, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have something to aim at, you're going to hit nothing, which is pretty much it, right? So if you have the goal.
If you aim at nothing, you hit it every time.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what he says. It's something like that. So if you have, like with your dad and I just coming out of isolation, you have to deliberately realise that, okay, I just feel at the moment totally frustrated and I could yell and scream at you round about now. But if you stop, if you can just bring yourself to stop, practice. It takes practice. It takes practice. And it's like I said to Jenny before, we've been married 47 years, so we've had longer to practice to do this. And we still don't do it perfectly. So there's no way somebody who's married, how long have you been married, Jen?
15 years.
Yeah, so she's only had 15 years practice. I've had 47 years practice. How long have you been married, Ben?
22.
Yeah. So... And Rob and I still don't have it perfectly, but we do it better than what we did when we were younger. And I think a big part of why we do it better is because we are very conscious of the power of our words, very conscious of it. It's always been right at the front of our minds. And so it makes you choose differently. When you really think about and you know the power of your words, it does make you choose differently the majority of the time.
I think that's one thing I've really noticed, like with everything is different. We're all feeling really vulnerable. We're feeling really awkward. Like it's weird. Like the world is not what we know. So those things that are your automatic response, like I'm normally the gather everybody at my home, extrovert, human, that person. But I almost feel like the more vulnerability we have, the more intentional we need to be, So, and it's
absolutely.
kind of even just that wisdom of going, how should we made some rules, which I borrowed from Brene Brown, who's
Come on now,
cult following. But she said in this season, when it's all different, like teaching our kids how to do that as well. Like, if I go,
Yeah.
oh, you guys have been married 3 times longer than we have, I could
Yeah.
learn from you. Brene said in their family, they have rules, like when it's messy. So they said, like, when you're under pressure, when you're feeling awkward, when you're feeling vulnerable, we have no unkind words. Very intentional about what we say. But also we have no kind words with unkind faces. Which was another,
Yeah, that's another level.
I know. And I just went, but it was so easy I was listening to the podcast, got back and went, we need this right now, family. And it was easy for, the 6 and the 8-year-old and the 2 38-year-olds. We could all follow those same rules and the kids could see us modeling that. And, when I was just like, come to dinner, Izzy was like, no unkind words, Mom. She's like, yep. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it is that really purpose behind what we do say.
I think, too, if you really look at the coronavirus, that there's an element of grief, a strong element of grief in all of us around this, because we're losing a lot. We're losing our normal lifestyle. We're losing contact with friends. We're losing contact with family. There's loss. And it's very well known that when somebody dies, the different people that have been connected with that person, they'll all go through that grief differently. We all go through loss differently. So if we can give ourselves enough space in times like this to realize that we're actually going through loss and we're going through grief, then it makes it a bit easier for us to stop and think about our words. The other thing is the power of silence, which is just as powerful as words, the power of words. And sometimes we're better off to just say absolutely nothing, particularly in times like this, because everybody is going through grief and it's changing from one thing to the other. Like, seriously, when we lose somebody when they die, we haven't got different situations happening all the time. This situation with the coronavirus is changing from day to day. Sometimes within twice a day, you will hear different things come back that the government's decided to do or not decided to do. So we're going over that loss over and over and over again. So, I really feel silence is just as powerful as words and it's smart to use it.
So going along that point and thinking about Big Bad Al, she used to say something like it's better to be thought a fool than to open up your mouth and confirm it. What was that she was saying? It was around words.
Yeah. It's actually a proverb.
Oh, okay.
There's a proverb that says you're better off to stay silent, and goes along that lines. You're better off to stay silent and let people think you're a fool than open your mouth and confirm that you're a fool. It's so true. so true.
Yeah. So what is the advice you would give – what encouragement would you give to parents that are listening at this time around words for their loved ones, for their kids, their partner?
Well, I guess first and foremost is to really think about and maybe even research for yourself the power of words, the power that they have on people physically and emotionally. And when you understand that power, then realize that you have that power within your mouth. And you can use it if you want to build your children up, if you want to see your children, if you want to see your partner, if you want to see yourself reach your full potential, you will become very conscious of your words. But again, don't get hung up. If you say the wrong thing, that you always have other words to be able to, like, I'm sorry. That's such a powerful word. So you can use those words to overcome the negative. The reality is that they say it takes 12 positive words to outweigh one negative word. So if we can even have that in the back of our mind, that's what it takes. So if I'm going to say a negative word, then I realize if I want my child to have confidence, I'm going to have to say another 12 positive ones, which will wear me out to get them back to where they were before I said that negative one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I think just go and research. There's a lot out there about the power of words. Go and research it. Don't take my word for it. And see what either scientists and others say, psychologists say, And then when you really understand the power of those words, then you will choose them a lot more carefully, because I know that's what it did for me. When your father and I really looked into what, I don't even know why we did, but it was way back when we were first married. And we both looked into the power of words, and that's when we decided, right, we need to be very conscious of what we're saying. And that's why we are with our staff. We are with the children. We have our staff in our childcare centres. We're very we encourage and train a lot our staff on how to speak to the children, to bring the best out in the children.
No, it's really good. Thank you for that. So, Jen, how would you reflect on what we've talked about today? Like, what comes up for you after listening to today's conversation?
I don't know. I guess it's one of those things that we're all in a really uncomfortable space at the moment. It probably does make us feel like it's almost an out-of-body experience. Like you're watching the things that you normally do just naturally.
Yeah.
So being I think it's very timely, like being very intentional around what comes out of my mouth, and letting ourselves really be in touch with what you're feeling, and kind of, checking in with yourself and making sure that it's good, because it is so impacting. Like I think there's a weight and a heaviness to it, but a real responsibility that we can, shape the culture in our families.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful thought to think about, that we have the power with our words to shape the culture of our family.
Absolutely.
I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So just wanted to give a shout out to Brene Brown. Yeah. Jenny mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Someone that I've got a lot from. So Brene's got a new podcast. So if you're listening to this podcast and enjoying it, she has one called Unlocking Us. Just be aware that Brene's happy to swear or cuss, as she will put it. Jen, did I say that?
Cussing's a really good thing in the South.
So just be prepared if you do go over to Brene's channel. But a lot of what we've talked about today, she's a real champion of this kind of stuff. So thank you for being part of our podcast today. Our next episode will be about love languages, and we just want to thank you for joining us in our conversation today. And remember to enjoy your parenting roller coaster ride.